I can't stress how much knowing people is like the main motivator. It's really what opens the door. Mm-hmm. Because if you send your like CD in or whatever it is, a link or Dropbox, it's just going to sit there. It is. So somebody has to champion you, and that's the difficult part.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Goodman. You're listening to 2020, and I'm here with Cory and Siobhán. And this week we have back for, I don't know, is this the sixth time or something? Because he's just incredibly, insanely interesting. One of my favorite guys. If you don't know about him, he's literally, he was there for Hendrix. He was there for Cream. He was there for Led Zeppelin. He was on the road with Megadeth, in the trenches with everyone, down to Bette Midler, because he's the coolest dude in, I will argue, in the music industry.
He's like Steve Wood. He's like the Forrest Gump of the music industry. Like every major event in the music industry has Steve Wood behind it.
Except smarter.
But anyway, to introduce our guest once again, Steve Wood, we got into a lot of cool talk about, more touring. A lot about Marty Friedman, one of our Lost Symphony friends. So many different topics we covered.
He's a manager. He manages stuff. Now he's apparently managing a tour with Marty Friedman. You'll just have to listen. But holy crap, this guy is. I want to drink his stuff for coffee, breakfast.
Non-stop information, cool stories, everything like that. Stay tuned. Check it out. Part 2 with Steve Wood. 2020. Subscribe.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode of 2020. Don't forget to like and subscribe at 2020-d.com. No, I'm getting there. Ben, do not interrupt me. You have all episode to do that. We have back for part 2 the amazing Steve Wood with all the incredible stories of Shelter Music Group, just running an empire across the globe of all the artists, all the amazing people that you want to hear about, that you read about, that you see on TV, that you listen to. He has all of the stories and all the scoop. We're very excited to come back for part 2 and hear even more about what you have to say about what's going on in the world of Steve Wood.
First
Give me Shelter.
Thank you for having me on. It really means a lot. And, I need to talk about a lot of the things that I do because, I need an outlet, and it's wonderful that you want to hear it,
We're happy to be your outlet. It's amazing to hear all the things that go on behind the scenes in your world. And we sort of uncorked a lot in episode 1, and I can't wait to sort of dive further in this episode.
And at the end of episode 1, we just started talking about Rick Beato. So Steve, you want to talk about how you connected with him?
Sure. Well, he connected with me. I was just sitting here one day and I can't remember if it was a phone or an email, but it was him. And he said, "Look, you don't know me." And I said, "Actually, I hate to correct you, but I do." And I love your show, And so we got talking about that. And he said, "Look, I'm in Atlanta. I see these guys in bands. How do you break a band in this day and age? Because it's not like it used to be. It used to be, if you were good, the record company would sign you, and then they would give you tour support, and you go out and play, and hopefully it works. Well, now it's not like that. So he was asking me what I should do. If it was me, what would I do? So I told him, and we just kept in touch as a result of that. So now I know what you want me to do regarding Les Paul, and I would only be too happy.
Well, let's fill in everybody listening. So Steve has become like serendipitously intertwined in what we're doing, a Les Paul documentary, which we the first episode, so it's called The House of Les Paul. But our guest who we're actually having on next, the mayor of Mahwah, New Jersey, Mr. Jimmy Wysocki, was Les Paul's
confidant.
Isn't
it the house that Les built or something like that?
Ben doesn't know the name of his own documentary.
Yeah, whatever.
He has people for that.
Whatever. Well, he actually did build a house for my buddy, Jimmy Wysocki, the mayor of Mahwah, New Jersey. And so here's the thing. He was Les Paul's confidant for 28 years. So Les Paul obviously was like a huge musician. he had secrets like Leonardo da Vinci style, as far as he was an incredible inventor, and he knew all kinds of crazy stuff as far as sound on sound recording, as far as tweaking microphones, sounds. He was the first guy to speed up his guitar to double speed and then to change the pitch, and all these crazy firsts were Les Paul. And Jimmy was the guy he told a lot of these things to, because when he met Jimmy was a blue collar guy. He'll tell us his story next week, so you'll just have to check in with Jimmy the Mayor. But all of this stuff happened, and Les told this guy, he gave him all this information. So even though he wrote a biography, even though he did all these interviews, there was so many secrets that he kept. He told this guy, and he gave him all of his stuff. And by all this stuff, I mean, like, literally, he died in his 90s. For years, was slowly giving my buddy Jimmy, the mayor of Mahwah, New Jersey, the place that Les lived for decades of his life, his first tape machine, a bunch of his guitars, all of his manuscripts. He even, we can get into it next week, but he even had a whole dumpster at his house and said, Jimmy, get rid of all this stuff. And Jimmy took everything out because it was every piece of information. And Jimmy still has this stuff. So when I found this out, I said, I have to make a documentary about this, because Les Paul is one of the most interesting people, not just as a musician, but as far a scientist, as inventor, a pioneer. Like he changed the way production was done, engineering was done. So Steve has been kind enough to help me with this project. In fact, we've been going back and forth. I just saw him in California about Joe Perry, who's coming to town, which, by the way, to add to the serendipity of this, I'll say this to you now, Steve. 2 years ago, I was in our friend Ernie Bach's house with our friend Gary Sharon, and you'll know where this is going. Gary Sharon said to me when I asked him, when are you going to release the new Extreme record? Because Cory and I heard it on this show. Nuno played it for us. It's incredible.
Yeah, not on the show, after the show. But
after the show, the after show party.
But go watch the Nuno episode anyways. It's still good.
It's amazing. But he goes, I don't know. But what I can tell you is, if Aerosmith doesn't make it to Vegas, which they didn't, right? I'm playing with Joe Perry. Don't tell anyone. I didn't tell anybody. I then tried to nail your partner, Paul, down and said, get me Joe Perry. Benny, he's going to be moving around. He's going to be in Vegas. We can't get him here. I go to Ernie's house, and the day that I go, Steven Tyler goes into rehab, and I find out Gary Sharon's back on deck. And then you call me only a few days later to tell me Joe Perry's now back with Gary, and they're even going to Brazil and playing with ZZ Top here in Boston.
Correct.
So if that's not the star, and by the way, Gary Sharon was in the room for episode 2. He's in episode 2 that it's not released yet, but you'll have a cut of it. He was there. So Paul Geary, your partner, was there. Gary Sharon was there. We're talking about Joe Perry, and no one could nail him down. And now he's going to be in town because of you. And we just went and met with you in California about other things, and it just worked out because I was back in California supporting Carol Kay.
And
it's crazy. There's more.
Yeah, it just so happens that I'll be talking to my good friend, the Reverend Billy ZZ Top.
The 22nd in Boston at the Pavilion, they're playing together.
That's right.
Steve, tell me if you
could
could
take the video.
Tell me if you could see this happening. Joe Perry and Billy Gibbons each coming out with a Les Paul. Because if I know anything about Billy Gibbons, other than he plays very light guitars that are like 3 pounds, he is one of the greatest guitar collectors of all time, and he brings millions of dollars. Not as bad as Rick Nielsen, who scares me, but millions of dollars worth of guitars on tour with him. So if you say, hey, why don't you play this 7-figure Les Paul? I'll be like, sure, and throw it into his rack, just like Joe Perry. Because those guys, they play a different guitar every freaking song. So I could see them in Boston representing our friend Les. Their influence, because even though those guys are on the older side, Les was the inventor. He started it. So I could see them on stage playing those guitars. So if you want to know my opinion, I think we should make that happen and manifest it.
I'm going to be in the Boston area for 4 days while we rehearse at Aerosmith's studio. And I'm going to then set the scene with Joe. And then that'll be a preparation for Billy, how I lay it out to him. But Billy and ZZ Top are managed by the same company I'm part of. So it all lines up, you know?
Well, Jimmy, who's coming on next week on the show, Jimmy the Mayor, he is incredibly nice. In fact, on episode 2, I'm gonna ruin it for you, for the people, but you can go watch it. He gives a Django Reinhardt pick that was given backstage in 1945 to Les Paul with his own name on it from Django, the gypsy jazz guitar player that, for people that don't know, died in 1950. There's very little about him.
3 fingers or something,
Only
right?
played with with 2 fingers, I believe.
Yeah,
and there's very few videos of him. He's like a Robert Johnson in that he's shrouded in mystery. Gave a Django Reinhardt pick to Barry Goudreau at our friend Ernie's house because he's a psycho and just like, I'll just give it to Barry. Barry will know what to do with it. If Joe and the Reverend Billy Gibbons, and you already know, Jimmy is going to also be crazy in your presence because his whole thing is he believes that all of Les's stuff is supposed to continue to bring smiles to people's faces. So I can't imagine that if you don't get these guys in a room, that he just won't make it like Oprah. Just saying, because we're going to have cameras running. And for me, I'm just going to sit back in total jealousy. Actually, if you watch Barry Goudreau getting this Django Reinhardt pick, you could see me literally turning green. I get so I get literally upset. My nose starts flaring, and I walk up to him, and I actually say to him, like, tell me it's not like Christmas morning. But I'm actually angry. I'm getting aggressive with Barry Goudreau of Boston because I was so upset that Jimmy would give him a Django Reinhardt pick in front of me because I was so jealous, if that tells you anything.
It does. It does. Well, I'm excited about this, guys, because if the stars align, there's 2 big ones right there, Billy and Joe. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I can pull this off? I'm going to try really hard.
Well, it seems like you are the ultimate curator of all things, and not to gloss over everything that we've just talked about, but I'm curious. You referenced, like, when we started the episode, you know, you got a call saying, how do you break a band? And if I can change courses here, I think that we kind of skipped over that, and you apparently have the answer. So can you talk a little bit about what you said? I think you said Rick Beato called you, and it said, how do you break a band? Let's go back to that. Yeah. Sorry, Ben, I changed the conversation.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to sit here and play Les Paul's prototype guitar that you could see on the neuroticguitars.com.
Yeah, but don't actually play it.
Don't mind us. Yeah, don't mind us. We're just chatting. Well, what I told him was, you know, things have changed. It's not like it used to be. And I told him that you're going to need social media. You have to have some access to all the social media, whether it be TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. You definitely got to have that. And you also have to have somebody that knows how to place the music with people that can move the needle. And therefore, you have to know people. You really do. I can't stress how much knowing people is like the main motivator. It's really what opens the door. Mm-hmm. Because if you send your like CD in or whatever it is, a link or Dropbox, it's just going to sit there. It is. So somebody has to champion you. And that's the difficult part. Because
well, you know, if you send a CD, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get a 19-year-old working at the company, and they're like, wait, how do I put the CD into my phone?
Yeah, that's right. You know, or my car. But look, so you have to know somebody, and then because you know them, they're going to hear you out. They're going to listen. They're going to give you your day in court. God knows how you do it without that. I mean, it's really difficult. So I told Rick, look, whatever you want, send it to me and tell me what you're trying to achieve, where you see this going. And I would be happy to take it to the A&R department of whatever company we may be talking about. In many cases, it's any A&R department, So that's how it starts. That's exactly how it starts. And then you need an agent. You're going to have to play, I think, because people want to see that you can deliver, if it's a rock band, let's say, or if it's a alternative band. If it's a band, then you're going to have to show you can play. And once you get all that, then you need a manager. And the manager is key because he knows all the doors to open. And then you need a publicist because he can spread the word. And again, you have to know these people. And if you don't know them, you're really going to have a hard time. I don't know how to help you. If you say, look, I've got a band and you don't know anybody, it's like, hey, how do you get in the music business? I don't know. I get asked that question a lot. And in my case,
it feels like now being in a successful band is like curing cancer. Because it sounds to me like you have to, first off, bass players, most of the bass players I know don't even know like what PR stands for. Nevertheless has a PR agent friend. Like the amount of friends, it just sounds like there's a lot of nepotism. Well, except Ron. This is why Star Set is set aside, because Ron not only knows people, he can fix buses, he understands operations and logistics, and that's what it sounds like you need to do now. Is like instead of having to know how to play Eruption by Van Halen as a guitarist, you should have a million TikTok followers, and if you have that, then you can play guitar in the band.
Well, yeah, but there's a thing here. There is a somewhat of I think, a troubling aspect to all this. And I don't know if you agree, but I don't believe that today's youth have the attention span to actually listen to music.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
It's come down to TikTok, which is like 30 seconds.
At most, a lot of them are even faster than that. It's wild.
Yeah. So if you can't plead your case in that time, it's kind of tough. I mean, it's like, look, I'm older, but when I was young, you went around to people's houses to listen to albums. It was a thing. You listened to music. Now, let's just ask the question, how do people listen to music today? How do they? What do you think they do? I don't know.
It's a lot. So I learned this when I was teaching guitar lessons, mostly, teaching younger kids, and I would ask them, first question I would ask them, like, are there any songs, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite band?
Yeah.
And they'd go, I don't have a favorite band. I don't really listen to music.
Right.
And I go, why are you taking guitar lessons? But that's irrelevant. But they would tell me that they would hear music in the background of like a streamer, like someone streaming,
music.
like
bed music,
or on a TikTok video. So they would know like clips of songs, but they would never know like who it was or like the name of the song. They was I liked the song in that YouTube video, but have no idea what it is.
I joined the army because of Godsmack.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious, because there's people. I didn't join the army, but there's people. There's a guy I talked to, and he was like, "Oh, aren't they like the army band, or maybe it's a Navy? They did the Navy thing, the Navy thing." But it's one of those things where it's like, again, you have to live under a rock not to know Godsmack, because they're literally the soundtrack to the Navy.
Yeah, but it's true. Listening to music is becoming sort of a dying art form.
I disagree. I'm going to tell you why, because I think, so just like bell bottoms weren't cool in the 80s, but they came back. Just like metal wasn't cool in the 2000s or in the 90s or whatever, it became uncool, but it came back. Just like vinyl. So vinyl has surpassed CD sales. I think what's going to end up happening is people have such a short attention spans. I've seen, and I bet you there's going to be a whole group of children that start unplugging. I think they'll start going back and be like, wait a minute. So people used to listen to these cylindrical things, and they would just turn until it was over, and then you would turn it over and actually do it. And I think that they're going to go back and start understanding that magic. And I also think that with buying vinyl for the posterity of the whole thing. Some of them have actually learned what it's like to listen to a side A and a side B. And I actually
But here's the thing, who's buying vinyl? I don't think it's young kids. It's older people that are going for the
people who don't have their LPs anymore because they got rid of them and want them back.
Like, I just from, and my, maybe Siobhán, because of the crowds at Starset, you have a little bit of an insight. Obviously, Starset fans fucking love Starset. So, but so I don't know if it translates to the general love of music, but in my experience, I don't see the, go ahead, Ben.
It says consumers in the age bracket 25 to 34 were just as likely as those age 55 and older to buy vinyl records in the United States, with 21% of those in both age groups having purchased at least one record in 2019.
Where is this data coming from?
Obviously, Google lying to me.
But even that, 25 to 34, that's... It's still, those are people that still may have their parents may have had a turntable in their house when they were growing up a little bit. I don't know if it's like this thing that's going to reawaken the music industry.
Data shows that 18 to 35-year-olds accounted for 45% of U.S. vinyl sales. So that's 18.
But I wonder if they're listening, because there is a sort of the hip aspect of, I'm going to buy a vinyl, I'm going to have a record player, and I'm going to have a vinyl collection.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know that people are really sitting and having music. I mean, I remember even in college, we would go and have music listening parties too. But I was in music school. Even in our generation, it was kind of waning.
I'm wondering if these 18-year-olds just have no idea what a record is. Like, oh, that looks cool. I'm going to put that on my wall. I just get that thing. They have no idea it plays music.
I would believe it.
I believe that. I believe it. I think a lot of it has to do with people buying the signed editions of things, and they buy it for the card inside, signed by Lana Del Rey, or the weird vinyl. But I think that I think that with anything, we don't give credit to the younger kids. And I live with a 17-year-old who's way smarter than me, and she always knows more than I do. And as much as, she doesn't know bands, she knows songs. I say this all the time. She knows Careless Whisper by George Michael, but doesn't know, Faith, because that's not the one that was on her Spotify list or what have you. But I think that, kids are going to go back and they're going to start discovering this stuff because, listen, if you listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon from start to finish, it's a mind-fucking-blowing experience. And it's just like taking that first hit of acid or smoking weed for the first time. Some kid's going to happen upon his dad's fucking vinyl of Dark Side of the Moon and go, holy shit, and tell all of his friends. And I firmly believe that there will be a resurgence of that, because just like anything, where it dies, it won't die completely, and then somebody will be a contrarian and be like, oh, I listen to everything.
Its 50th anniversary of that album is coming up right now.
Is it still on the charts? I bet it is.
Probably. 50 years. I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
50 years. I actually saw them perform it live in London at the Rainbow Theatre. And I was very fortunate living in London in those days. You saw everybody. I mean, just everybody. Led Zeppelin, 10 Years After, Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, you name it. We saw it. And I'll never forget, in the Rainbow Theatre in London, Pink Floyd had rigged up a Spitfire plane, which is a Second World War British fighter plane. And it was on pulleys. And during, there's a part in Dark Side of the Moon where there's all this explosion going on. And this plane flew over the audience into the back of the stage, and there was a massive explosion. We'd never seen anything like that at a rock concert. Incredible. I mean, and in those days, you could play a whole album to an audience that hadn't been released yet, I mean, I don't know if you do that today, but...
Well, funny story that you say that, because one of my favorite stories that Paul McCartney regurgitates on every single tour, but it never gets old for me, is that on a Monday, he played Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club for Jimi Hendrix. And then was it Wednesdays when they used to release records? And then on Wednesday or Thursday, the day afterwards, he was playing it live before they were and debuting their music.
Yep. A little bit of trivia. Number one, that was on Shaftesbury Avenue in the Savile Theatre, which was owned by Brian Epstein. And all of the Beatles were in attendance for that concert. And they were blown away. It had been out like 2 days, like you say. And he did another thing about Jimi Hendrix. I got to tell you this one. There was a singer called Lulu. I don't know if you've ever heard her, but she was married to Maurice Gibb at one point from the Bee Gees, right? She had a TV show, and Jimi Hendrix was the guest. And that day, Cream disbanded, okay? And her show was live. And Jimi Hendrix was there to do Hey Joe, because that was his single. And he started to play. It's live TV, and you can find it on YouTube. It's there. And he starts playing about like 8 bars, and he says, I'm fed up with this shit. This is for Cream. And then he went into Sunshine of Your Love. All right, right there, like it was crazy. Nobody knew what to do. He overran live TV. There's the BBC. I mean, they're still talking about that. And if you want to check it out, Jimi Hendrix doing Cream on the Lulu show. Amazing.
It's the best Cream ever sounded. I mean, listen, I love Cream, but Hendrix is one of those guys that he did all the covers, but he did the covers better. So like Bob Dylan wrote the songs.
All on the Watchtower.
Yeah, all on the Watchtower. But then Hendrix plays it. But Bob Dylan's the perfect example of the guy that literally none of his music appeals to me. But then he wrote music for everybody else, and it was incredible. It's like Blowing in the Wind. Wait, Bette Midler won a Grammy for that? Holy crap, that was him. Like every single song he wrote is like a hit, but it's just for somebody else.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, the Byrds, his versions, Bob Dylan's painful to listen to.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man.
He's got a mouth organ up here. The Byrds with that 12-string Rickenbacker, wonderful. So, but actually, I got to admit, I'm starting to get into Bob Dylan. I'm trying. I'm going back, and I don't know about you, but as I get older, I'm rediscovering music again in people I'd forgotten about. I'm going back and listening to it. I don't know if
I did that when I got a dog. I walk my dog, and then I go and listen to like Rainbow Rising. It was what I was listening to today. Some Cozy Powell and some Dia with some Blackmore, and the dude Jimmy Bain from Thin Lizzy, and amazing. And I'm like, I feel like I'm learning things, but really all I'm doing is going back to when I was 20 years old, going through the record bins, except now on my MP3s.
But you hear different things. Even me, like as I've gone from classical music to more produced music and rock and learning about audio stuff. I mean, I go back and listen to stuff and it sounds completely different to me because I'm hearing different things, I
got to ask you something. I've watched you a lot on the Lost Symphony videos, right? At what point did you realize that you had gone beyond just playing to what you play there, which is phenomenal? How did that happen? I mean, how did you?
Probably an accident.
Well, no, but you're brilliant at it.
Thank you.
You seriously are. I mean, did it just come quite naturally and quickly I mean, I always loved classical music, but I didn't ever like the culture of it, and I think I always gravitated towards, I don't know, wanting to be edgy with stuff. And so I think I just fell sort of accidentally into things that felt comfortable. And I'm still...
When did you realize you were better than Heifetz?
You improvise. Those solos you've done, I mean, you've worked them out, right? There's notes.
Yeah, well, Ben and Cory helped me a lot. I mean, they can attest to it. I had to really grow out of my comfort zone because it is not comfortable for a classical player to go into improvising.
This is brilliant thing that you just said, Steve, because one of my favorite achievements in the studio was getting Siobhán to think autonomously for herself, because she's so used to verbatim being an exorcist with their hands. Like, you want to hear Chopin, and she makes it sound exactly like it, because everything from the pianissimo mark to the slurs to all that stuff tells you exactly what they want to play. Right. So regimented that when you say do something on your own, she's staggered. She's like, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. So to quiet her mind and have her write stuff, like the newest Lost Symphony song, which is not out yet, is the greatest collaboration between Siobhán and I, because what I did was I wrote all the themes. I wrote it like the Who's Overture, where it's like almost like a whole record of themes. And I wrote pulsing piano stuff and sent it to her. She goes, oh, the song's written. No, I did nothing as far as arrangement. And then I because I gave her basically an outline to color in, she completely rewrote the song, redid everything. She's like, I just kind of wrote, around your stuff. But what she really did was she was like a horse that ran through the fields of her own mind. But because I basically put a fence off in the distance, she didn't feel like she was going to fall off the planet. Does that make sense?
That's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah. I mean, I got another question. I mean, I watched all your videos. How difficult is it, and Cory, you're in this too, when you do those remote videos and you're all in 5 different rooms? How
Cory, you should answer this.
That's more, it's a Cory question probably.
Well, first of all,
thank you for
those are not live, so everyone is kind of doing their own thing and then sending it in, and then I'm just syncing it up. So it's not that difficult. We kind of developed a system for it because we had to do a lot of videos like that. So once it's recorded, it's more just here's your part, film yourself playing it. And then
but let me tell you what is difficult when Marty Friedman sends you something that is not on a steady grid with no click track and no steady tempo and says program MIDI and then record violin parts from Japan.
Oh, you should tell him this story.
That is a lot of fun.
So because this is good bus material for Marty Friedman. So let me set this up, Steve.
All right.
So when Marty Friedman first agreed to do this song Requiem, I was in Florida for my birthday, hanging out with Siobhán. And I'm like, oh my God, greatest birthday present ever. We get Marty Friedman. Send Marty the song. It's all wrong. It is? Yeah. Let me do something for you. He writes a theme that has nothing to do with the song at all. Literally. But he's like, okay. And it's not to a grid because he just plays it naturally because he has such good feel that he can make something that sounds like not in time, even
which
though it's
I
not
enjoy.
Really,
just remotely is very hard.
But it's very hard when you're in Japan over here, and then Siobhán and I are in Miami. So me being uninformed, not realizing that he's a Sex Pistols, Ramones, like simple is the way, not musically trained, listens to Elvis more than he listened to Chopin. I'm like, Siobhán, Marty Friedman's a goddamn scientist. I want you to go really highbrow with this and come up with some Brahms kind of, counter melodies and some Dvorak here. Like, she's like, okay. She writes this incredibly complex harmony. Now, meanwhile, Marty Friedman had sent reference tracks of where he thought it could go. This is where the Cartesian thought, they say, the illusion of free will, where you think you could do whatever you want, but really what Marty wants is exactly the 3 notes he sends for every single chord. So when she sent him what I asked her to do, which is come up this highbrow Berklee School of Music, no one's going to fuck with us, they're going to think you're a genius. And pretty much he was like, this is literally all wrong. And that was the start. That was the start of maybe about 200 emails. Between all the side emails between me and Marty, some side emails from Siobhán. Scott was involved in this, but I felt like I was a 17th century philosopher writing to other philosophers about music.
Oh,
and that poor Siobhán was in the Iron Maiden slowly asphyxiating.
Yeah, there was inception levels of passive aggressive.
Difficult.
Yeah, the song is called Requiem by Lost Symphony for those listening, and you can check that out. We'll put a link in the description as well.
And so fun fact for you, Steve, if you listen to the beginning of the piece, that's Marty's version that I redid according to his rules, and then the very end is actually my original accompaniment to his guitar theme. So
it's an intro outro.
Yeah, so we didn't want to throw away that work because it was beautiful. So we're like, we're gonna cap off the end of it.
So this is how Marty passively aggressively helped us. He took our song, said it was all wrong, refused to work on it, started at the beginning, hated what Siobhán did. I said, you know what, Siobhán, I love this so much, I'm putting it to the end of the song, which is why the song's 11 fucking minutes long. But in the middle of the song, we had a solo from our late friend Ollie Herbert, who we lost. And I said, listen, we got to bring this together somehow, Marty. So Marty cut it up and made it all Martified. So it is actually Marty in the middle of the song. But if you do listen to
we made the beginning work. The beginning was what he wanted.
It's amazing. It's amazing. But if you listen to it, it's Marty's concept at the very beginning. But if you listen to it, it's like, I use Amadeus. If like you take a theme, it's like if Mozart walked in and took a theme and then completely changed it. That's what Siobhán did, and that's exactly how Siobhán writes with me. I'll send her stuff like Marty, but instead of having the illusion of free will, I say literally make it better because I trust you so much that everything you do, I will ride your coattails because I'm assuming it makes me look smarter. That's the difference.
Oh, I don't know about you guys. I think Marty is on a whole nother level as a musician. I mean. Agree?
Insane.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. I mean, he is definitely a pioneer, and I mean, I respect him a lot. It was just an interesting. We come from such different ends of the spectrum, you know.
Indeed.
That it was funny to come together and figure out how
You're
that works
him
in the
spectrum?
middle.
You know, I don't know if you know this about Marty. And do you look at his Facebook posts?
I follow him on Instagram. Yeah, I see what he shares sometimes.
Well. The biggest thing in Marty's life is Elvis Presley. Are you aware of that?
Yes,
no, David Ellison referenced it, but I did not know that.
I was going to say David Ellison, just so you know, David Ellison's mom caught a scarf at one of Elvis's concerts.
Really?
And she knew that Marty was in love with Elvis, and she had in her will left Elvis's scarf, David Ellison's grandmother, to Marty, except for the fact that apparently they couldn't find it. But she knew, even David Ellison's grandmother knew that Marty was obsessed with Elvis.
Well, in the post that he went and saw the movie, and my son Zach said it was phenomenal. I'm going to see it in a few days. Have you seen it yet, guys?
Not yet. I've been hearing the same thing.
I
have to see it.
I hear it's off the chain here. You know. Anyway, so Marty saw it. He had an advance copy. And he wrote like this much text in Facebook about it. And in it, he tells them that he's not a religious guy, but the nearest thing he's ever come to having a religious experience was watching that film about Elvis. And he says he has 1,100 Elvis albums, basically every album that he's ever released, and every country where that album is being released in.
Does he have room in that apartment in Japan to hold all these 1,100 albums?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Seriously, 1,100. You should read that thing. He says he actually cried during the film because it affected him so much. And he says there's no point in anyone ever doing anything else about Elvis since that came out. And they're all wasting their time. And I got to tell you, the commercials for it look great. I got to tell you, that kid, Austin Butler, I don't know. Have you seen it, Siobhán?
No, I haven't. I've seen the ads for it, and I would love to see it.
Well, listen,
Absolutely.
we know. I can tell you right now, it has to be the best movie ever, because if there's anything I've learned about Marty Friedman, that if he's not a part of it, he can't even acknowledge its talent, or it's like, what was his quote for Lost Symphony, Cory?
Oh,
it was beautiful. It was like these guys like really
are too
like
obsessed with guitar.
Yeah, like they really, are passionate about guitar or something. It was man, I gotta find it. But yeah, he gave us an amazing quote about the project that it sounded really like a compliment, but the more you read it, the more like diplomatic.
It was a little bit of a veiled insult.
Yeah, it was like,
British, you're good at that, by the way. You walk away. You think,
But the point of what I'm saying is that if Marty wasn't a part of it, he can't acknowledge how good it is.
Right, so that's a statement. I agree with you.
So for Marty to acknowledge that this movie was good and he had nothing to do with it, he wasn't a consultant, he wasn't. it has to be the best movie ever made because Marty Friedman doesn't acknowledge anything.
No, and it's the same with the Lost Symphony quote. It was like, oh, well, but that one song that I worked on was pretty okay.
Yeah.
That was pretty okay, yeah. And we love Marty. Listen, I love Marty Friedman, but man, he's a hard guy. Jeff Loomis, I tell this story, but Jeff Loomis did a song with him. And when Marty sent back his version of the song, he took out 95% of what Jeff Loomis did. And when Jeff listened to it, he goes, I knew he'd hate my parts. And then like continue to whip himself in the back, even though he's the greatest guitar player on the. He probably thought I tried to sound too much like him. That's literally what he said to me, and I felt so bad for Jeff. I'm like, meanwhile, I suck at guitar, and I'm like, Marty, I'm just gonna do what I want. I'm sorry. And Jeff is still sitting there like, I hope he likes it. He only used one solo. He was upset. He was literally upset. I'm like, I'm putting it all back in. Don't listen to Marty. I'm gonna do whatever I want.
I love the guy. I have all of his records, and I'm a huge fan. And now it looks like I'm gonna be managing him, so I'm excited about it.
This is a great case study because he is, a tough case, but amazing musician. When someone like him calls you up and says, I need someone to manage me, or I want to start touring again, that's a massive operation. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that strategy-wise with an artist like Marty that's, he's got a niche, he's got a following, but he's been in another country. Like, how do you approach a project like that?
Right. Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself, this is me talking to Marty, what do you hope to achieve? Because you got to know what the playing field looks like.
Money.
Well, money came in as in not losing any. That was where that came in. But I wanted to know what what he wants to achieve, what he wants to gain, what his hopes are for this, because I need to know whether it's realistic. So, and he's down to earth, he's realistic. He realizes his appeal is limited because it's instrumental. Mm-hmm. He did try some vocals on some of his albums. It doesn't work. There's some guy barking all over it. It didn't work. So he realizes there's a niche there for that style of music. And so then we came up with the G3 idea of 3 guitar players. And then we realized we can do this. Then I found an agent that I believe would get in the trenches. And I looked for that agent. Then I acquired the right publicist who I knew could open the doors to get his social media placed in the right places, his interviews. And once I got the nucleus of how we start, we then went forward and we're now booking this.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. And we're moving forward. And he trusts me, thank God, and he's leaving it in my hands. And I'm putting it together.
Well, let me ask you this: what is the answer with instrumental music? Because I agree, and that's something that we face with Lost Symphony. It's harder because you don't have vocals. People relate to the lyrics. I mean, how do you approach marketing or growing a following with instrumental music? Let's say if you really want to break out of that, you got to get a break, a lucky break. Like maybe it's used on a commercial. Maybe it can be used in some other way, because the market isn't automatically going to just explode. Mm-hmm. It isn't. I mean, the shredding community is quite small, but it's enough there to make a decent living and make money out of it. You really can. Steve Vai, there's a guy.
Well, you just mentioned, I remember my first knowledge of shred music was listening to The Extremist by Joe Satriani, because it was in a Sony commercial. And everyone's dancing. It's like before Apple, it was Sony to Joe Satriani, and I had never heard him. And in the corner it said Joe Satriani, The Extremist. And I remember that's what made me go, that guy, that bald guy must be pretty good.
He was Steve Vai's teacher. Did you know that?
I did know that. And Larry Lalonde from Primus, Kirk Hammett. Yeah. There's a bunch of guys. The dude from
Skolnick.
Skolnick, I studied with him. Yeah.
These guys were all on a record label called Shrapnel, I think it was called originally.
Like Jason Becker.
Yeah, that's and Cacophony, which is Marty and Jason Becker. And so to get back to your question, we realize the limited appeal, and we're going to play to that limited appeal. And whilst doing this, hope we get some break somewhere that we can break out somehow. But you got to start somewhere. So we're starting with the basic building blocks of touring, concerts, agents, publicists, and then video. Maybe you can't do a lyric video because there's no lyrics, but and then coming on shows like this, talking about it, doing interviews, doing as many YouTube style interviews as you can, and publicizing the concerts. That's how we do it, and that's what we're going to do. And he wants to tour all over the world as well.
I'm going to tell you what I think would be really cool as a fan, and Marty and I have gone on back and forth about this because, as you can see, I'm holding a Jason Becker guitar. But it started off as this. I have all 3 of Jason's guitars that went up to sale, and it started off as an email to Marty. Actually, the whole reason the Jason Becker guitar sold is because Marty was working on Lost Symphony, and I had told Scott, the guy who purchased these guitars, about Cacophony when we were working on The World Is Over. I said, if we get Jeff Loomis together and Marty Friedman, it'll be like a tribute to Jason Becker without Marty knowing. We didn't tell Marty it was going to be a tribute. We just did it. And Scott went and watched all the things about Jason Becker and said, I have to help that guy. And messaged Marty directly and said, do you think that I could get these guitars? Like, would that be okay? And Marty actually wrote to Jason's family and said, I highly endorse Scott and Benny to be the gatekeepers of these guitars because they're real people. So Marty actually endorsed us to Jason's family getting to be the gatekeepers to these guitars. So in doing so, I said, Marty, if you come back to the United States, will you play these guitars? Because he played in Cacophony. And if there's anybody that should play all of Jason Becker's guitars, anyone in the world, it should be Marty Friedman. And Marty also, and I have the email and I will send it to you, said, next time I come to Boston, Benny, I hope you'll come on stage with me. Now, I know he said this because he wants to make a fool of me because I'm terrible.
That's not right.
No, well, I said, listen, if you want to play Wagon Wheel, I'm in. I'm going to send Cory with a wig for me because he's good. But I'm telling you this right now, that if he's doing a tour, I have 3 of Jason's guitars, and if there's 3 of them playing, we should have Skolnick, who's already played one, mind you. Yeah. Maybe John 5, and Marty play them, and we should make a video as a tribute for Jason, because what I've said to everybody is, it's one thing to give money to ALS, and research and all that, and to Jason, which we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars with these guitars for him. But what makes him happy is seeing people live on through his music. So I don't see anything cooler on the planet other than we had Nita Strauss, which you helped me do, which, by the way, I know Jason's a huge fan of Nita, loves her. So he was beyond excited. We had Nita Strauss, the Hurricane, play with Schools Out with Alice Cooper with this guitar. I'd love to see those 3 guys, when they come to Boston, play Jason's guitars, and I will bring them to the venue myself, and we'll string them however they want. And you tell them, because this will be news everywhere. You know this. I know this. It'll be on Blabbermouth, Metal Injection, Revolver. It'll be everywhere because Jason Becker is the saint, the Mother Teresa.
Our publicist will do this.
Oh, yes.
This is what I'm talking about. And that by using a publicist and knows what's going on, that's the sort of story we want. You know?
And so you know, this is the guitar that Eddie Van Halen played. This exact guitar that Eddie Van Halen, when he came to the house to help raise money for Jason back then, and gave him a Wolfgang guitar that we also have in our possession. And
he kissed his head. I remember.
Yes, he kissed his head. But he played Mean Street on this guitar. So I would love to see this go into the hands of Marty Friedman on stage and film it, because I know, knowing Jason just a little bit, not a lot, but enough to know that he would freak out watching John 5 and Jason and Marty, and I know Skolnick playing at the same time on all of his guitars. It hasn't been done.
Guys, it's going to happen. I think I'll let you have the dates as soon as I have them. October, November.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
I just thought that'd be cool.
I'm going to see you guys. I'm in Boston. I get there on the 8th. So I'm there. I leave for Brazil on the 12th. So we need to get together.
Nice. Well, all right. Not only do we need to get together, I was talking to Jim, the director of the Les Paul documentary that we're doing, that we obviously we're hopefully going to do the Joe Perry, Billy Gibbons stuff, but we all need to hang out and have a good hang.
Let's do it
sometime. Because Steve, you're in our area, and you got to come down to the guitar world down here. Well, Ernie may have a mausoleum, but I got a guitar vault.
Well, listen, 22nd of July at the Boston Pavilion. So note that down. You're coming.
And the 21st, the 21st is also Hampton Beach Casino.
Whatever you need, you've got.
I'll be at both if you'll let me.
No, of course I will. Do whatever.
Corey, you're going to come with me and watch some Joe Perry?
The man that makes it happen.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Consider it done. Happened. As I said, I'm in Boston all that time. So let's get together.
Let's do it.
I'd love that.
And
it'd be our honor, dude.
Siobhán's gonna have to just leave the tour to come hang out for a day or two.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not around Boston. But
well, it might not be possible for you, Siobhán, but there'll be other occasions. But anyway, open invitation.
We'll FaceTime you in.
Thank you.
So you don't miss
yes, for sure.
But so as we wrap up, we still got about 10 minutes left in the episode. But Steve, obviously, you got a lot of things going on right now that you've told us about. Anything else that you're looking forward to, in the future coming up? Any other projects that we haven't discussed yet?
Well, Godsmack, we're sending them off to South America in November. We're trying to coordinate that. They're doing Europe in October. And then 23 is going to be their year. The album's
You missed something.
done.
They're August 27th. They're opening up the new venue inside Fenway Park. I know because Shannon called me today to tell me, Benny, we're opening up the new venue at Fenway Park, August 27th. So I could tell you that's a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's happening. They'll be touring everywhere next year. My son's band will be out this year, Like a Storm. I will be speaking to Jim about video. Do not worry. And the Hollywood Vampires, start ramping up in June of next year. I know it's a year, but it has to be that way because.
What's it look like, Hon? I want to talk about this. So when they ramp up, do they go into, let's say, Alice Cooper's garage and plug into like their PV amps? Like, what is ramping up?
I'll tell you, because I'm putting it together.
Okay.
What it will take is probably 2 weeks at SIR on Sunset here. Okay. We bring in our band and crew and we rehearse. It's a pretty big situation. But the tour is starting in Romania, which is in Eastern Europe. So we haven't played for a couple of years. So we'll play for like 10 days in SIR. Fold it all up, put it on a plane and fly it to Germany. Once we get to Germany, we will go into another facility and quickly rehearse a touring setup and get it all perfect, and then go Germany into the first show. And then we're touring, but a lot of it's festivals. So we've got a festival set up, and then we go into England, and I've rented an arena for a few days where we're going to do 7 buses and God knows how many trucks. We're playing 18,000 seat buildings. And then we tour the whole of the UK. And it's all private jets.
It's as big as it gets, in other words.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this. So Tommy Henriksen, who's an incredible guitarist, super nice dude, he plays in Alice Cooper's band. He's been promoted to a vampire. Does that mean he gets his own private jet and his own bus now? Or is there still a pecking order?
It means he's on the album. I mean, on the poster. Look, it all happened. Johnny really believed that he needed. He was so instrumental in helping the album to get finished that he wanted a piece, and he became a principal. And now he's on the posters, and he'll have his own bus. if he wants
Good
it.
for Tommy. Good for Tommy.
I got 3 crew buses and 1 bus for each principal.
That's incredible.
That's the dream.
Good for Tommy. I'm really happy for him.
And the jet too. A lot of the time, the buses just go to the airport to meet the jet and drive to a hotel. I know it's kind of. I know it's another way of touring. But like, I know we're getting close to the end. But one of the big financial upsides to that band is VIP meet and greet.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
People pay to meet those 4 guys.
Is it going to be $10,000 like the Rolling Stones now, where even if you're Metallica, Mick Jagger won't even look at you as he walks by and signs?
1,500.
1,500. Staying.
Which for that level of star
$1,500.
power is reasonable. I mean,
That's very reasonable.
People, we cap it at 100 people a night.
yeah.
It's
That's
a
wild.
big number at the end of a tour.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
But
Do you make more off of the VIP meet and greets than you actually make on ticket sales?
It's
After expenses.
It's close. It's listen, it's something we all used to do for free before. You know, the record company, you got to have a meet and greet with the radio station. Now it's like merchandising.
Right. It is. It is.
Well, my brother always says, why do for free what you can be paid to do? And I agree
Spoken like
with
a
that.
Goodman.
Totally like a Goodman. Like, you know, it's almost like our Jewish parents taught us fiscal responsibilities. But that it's true. But do you also think the other side of this is, do you think it forces bands that didn't before have to do meet and greets to make more money because they can't make money as much on the other end? So now where they didn't worry about that 10 years ago, now it's an essential part of making the bottom line happen?
Thing. Nothing more than that. It's just another way to make money. Before, it was just a thing to help the radio stations play you. But now it's another money idea. That's what it is. And in the vampires, it's a big component. Mm-hmm. It really is.
Yeah. Well, those jets aren't going to pay for themselves, so makes sense.
That's right. That's right.
That's kind of amazing.
This has been fun, guys.
Steve, it's always a blast, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well,
So many great
I don't know
stories.
if you're around, Cory. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're doing this then.
And I was going to say to you, I listen, I'm going to put a proposition out there as far as a logistic thing. When we had Gary Sharon and Barry Gaudreau and Pat Badger at the last the episode you're going to watch tonight for the Les Paul doc, we did it at Ernie's house because Ernie is like the Kevin Bacon of this world. So I was thinking that if we did have Jimmy the Mayor come down and you could watch this episode because you could show it to them, maybe we do it at Ernie's because I know that Ernie, Joe Perry, and Billy Gibbons have both stayed there and hang out there, and I suspect they probably are already talking to Ernie because they're all friends.
It depends on what they're doing because I don't know.
Just putting it out there to the gods like Rick Beato.
Yeah, don't ask, don't get. I agree.
Right. Well, we can make plans offline and everything, but Steve, we always appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories and everything, and obviously the stuff you have going on is super exciting. So we'll have to check in again, down the road and see how all the stuff comes together.
Keeping up with your journeys.
I feel honored that you asked, and thank you.
And guys, if you haven't already watched Steve's previous episodes, we've had him on a couple times already. Go back into the archives at 2020-d.com. Stay tuned for all the tours and music that we've talked about.
I have to say this though before, if you haven't listened, and I have to because I haven't been interjecting with my
We're holding
crazy
you up.
tirades
You must
at the
say
end.
it now.
Well, if you haven't listened to Steve, because I understand he's not the dude from Breaking Benjamin. He's not the guy from Godsmack. He's not even Paul Geary, the guy who was in Extreme. So I understand if you're just going through people and you're like, whatever, fuck this Steve guy. I don't know who he is. His episodes, and I'm going to go on record as saying this, they're the fucking best. And you want to know why they're the best? Because he tells you why Soundgarden broke up. He has no fear, zero fear, because Steve has no fucks left to give, because if you don't know anything about him, he lived in the 60s. Again, nobody gave a fuck in London, and he was into fashion, and he comes from a family. His father's a great
Ben, don't
mogul.
give away the content of all the previous episodes.
So you understand.
Point watching.
I know, exactly. No point in watching, right?
but you have
But the answer is you have to go watch them
Go
because
down the
he's the
bunny
reason
hole.
all these people happen. He is the person putting them all up on stage at the end of the day, right? So
Right.
Yes.
But
He pulls the trigger.
It's not run out yet. We're still going.
Yes.
I
And
love
we-
your episodes.
Yes. As do I, as do Siobhán, as do I hope everyone listening right now. And we look forward to many more on 2020. We're done now. See you guys next week.
You know, like being in Steel Panther, like we chose our path years ago, and our path was the opposite of political correctness, right? So it's always been. We've always said fuck you to political correctness, and because of where we're at now, that has made us, I think, a lot stronger, and we're political correctness resistant.